Welcome to the Velvet Story, where enchantment meets emotion and love is anything but ordinary. In a hidden vale where moonlight stirs forgotten magic and destinies are written in silver stars, a whisper begins of a girl who didn't believe in fate and a creature who couldn't escape it. This is Whispers of the Moonbound Vale. Part 1. The Stranger in the Mist. The wind stirred the leaves in the moonbound vale, soft as a whisper, old as time. Nestled between mountains untouched by mortal hands, the vale was a place of silence and secrets, where stars danced lower and flowers hummed lullabies to the moon. Here lived Elira, a healer with hands that never harmed and eyes that always saw too much. She walked barefoot on mossy paths, her skirts brushing silver-tipped grass, her presence as gentle as the breeze. Creatures trusted her. Trees leaned slightly when she passed. Even the stubborn lilies opened early at her touch. Yet, Elira was alone. Not by choice, but because few dared enter the vale, and fewer still understood her quiet magic, the ability to feel not just wounds, but emotions buried deep in blood and bone. And so she lived, unbothered by time, counting years not in winters, but in petals that bloomed and withered. Until one night, everything changed. The moon hung heavy and red, a rare blood moon that painted the lake with molten silver. Elira had come to collect moon-drenched herbs when the stillness of the night broke. There, by the lake's edge, lay a man, soaked, pale, unmoving, yet not dead. Elira's heart jolted. She rushed to him, brushing wet curls from his forehead, her fingers trembling as she sensed it. His life force was dim but pulsing, weak yet waiting. But more than his injuries, it was his sorrow that gripped her. Raw, boundless, ancient. His breath caught the moment her hand touched his chest. His eyes flickered open, stormy gray, clouded with pain and disbelief. "You're real?" he rasped, voice barely a whisper. "You can see me?" Elira's brows drew together. "Of course I can. You're here." A faint, broken smile tugged at his lips. "No one has, in years." Part 2. The Veil Between Us. Elira moved quickly but gently, wrapping the stranger in her shawl, whispering to the lake, to the wind, as if asking them to keep the moment still. He was cold to the touch, yet the skin under her fingertips shimmered faintly, like dew catching moonlight. Unnatural, unfamiliar, but not frightening. She brought him to her cottage, carved from ancient oak and ivy, glowing with warmth that lived in firelight and dried lavender. She laid him by the hearth, feeding him herbal infusions between sleep and shivers. Days passed, or maybe only nights. Time in the vale obeyed the moon, not clocks. When he could finally sit upright, she asked his name. "Kaelin," he murmured, not meeting her eyes. "Prince of a kingdom long gone, cursed by the stars themselves." Elira sat quietly beside him, her fingers wrapped around a clay cup. She didn't press, she never did. "Why here?" she asked softly. "Why this veil?" Kaelin looked at the fire. "Because here, no one remembers me, And maybe here I could forget myself too. She nodded, not in agreement, but understanding. He watched her as if she were another mystery of the forest. Her calm, her stillness, her choice to sit in silence rather than fill it. I fade by dawn. Each day, I become mist, and every night I return. Illyra's breath caught. Is it painful? She asked. No, only lonely. There was nothing she could say to that, so she didn't. Instead, she poured him tea, set fresh bread near his hand, and returned to tending the fire. And Kaelin, he watched her like a man who had not been seen in a very long time. And in the quiet moments between the flames' crackle and the nightbird's call, something unspoken bloomed in the space between them. Not magic, not pity, but a gentle recognition. A soul meeting another through the veil of sorrow.
Part 3. The night he stayed longer. Kaelin faded with the first light of every dawn. Not as a man slipping into dreams, but as vapor unraveling from the seams of his own body. Like he was never meant to remain. Like the world itself forgot he had once existed in it. Illyra watched it happen each morning, from the corner of the room, behind half-lowered lashes, never asking him to stay, never begging time to bend. She simply placed his cup of tea in the same spot, even when there was no one left to drink it. She didn't chase what wasn't hers to hold. But one night, it was different. The air felt heavier, the stars dimmed, and Kaelin's voice trembled when he spoke. "I remember my mother's face less each day," he said. "Her voice is gone from my memory. I can't recall the last time someone looked at me like I mattered." Illyra looked up from her herbs. "You matter," she said, plainly. "Even if the world forgot, even if time unravels you piece by piece, you're here. I see you." And she meant it. There was no magic in her voice, no spell woven into her words, just truth. And in Kaelin's world of shifting shadows and cursed silence, truth was the rarest gift. He looked at her then, not as a healer, not as the quiet girl of the forest, but as someone who could fracture the walls around his fading soul, not with force, but with kindness. That night, Illyra touched his hand. For the first time, he didn't flinch. "I don't want to disappear." "Not tonight," he admitted. She didn't promise he wouldn't. She never made promises she couldn't keep. But she stayed beside him, close enough for him to feel her warmth, far enough for him to choose whether to reach back. And when dawn crept toward them like an inevitable tide, something changed. Kaelin's body did not dissolve as swiftly. The shimmer in his skin dimmed, but didn't vanish. His breath remained steady. Longer. He looked at his hand, stunned. "Why am I still here?" Illyra smiled faintly, brushing a stray leaf from his shoulder. "Maybe," she whispered, "you stayed because you wanted to." Part 4. Of Songs and Shadows. The days that followed blurred into a dream. Kaelin began to linger longer with each sunrise. What once was mere hours became half a day. The veil, sensitive to magic, to pain, to change, seemed to recognize his presence and welcome it. Illyra noticed it first in the smallest ways. The night lilies opened when he cast. The birds no longer fell silent when he spoke. And his reflection, once absent from water, began to shimmer faintly on the lake's surface. But more than that, he laughed. Once, while helping her hang glowing moss from the rafters, Kaylin stumbled on a low beam, knocking over a basket of dried petals that burst into the air like confetti. He froze, expecting her reprimand. But Elira, she laughed. Not a small chuckle, but a light, genuine sound that echoed through the cottage like wind chimes in spring. Kaylin blinked, stunned. And then he laughed too. It was rough, unpracticed, like a song half remembered. But it was real, and the veil bloomed a little brighter that day. That evening, as stars scattered across the sky, Kaylin found her by the lake, humming softly as she crushed herbs in a stone bowl. "What is that song?" he asked, voice soft. "My mother's lullaby," she said, without looking up. "She sang it when I was little, said it could soothe broken things." Kaylin sat beside her, the grass cool beneath his palms. "Then sing it again, for me." Elira didn't sing often, but something in his eyes, hopeful, fragile, made her want to give him that sliver of peace. Her voice, though quiet, wrapped around the wind, around the ache in Kaylin's chest, around the curse that clung to his bones. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in decades, he didn't feel hollow. But then, just as peace began to settle, Kaylin winced. His hand gripped his chest. "Elira!" The shimmer returned, brighter than before, not warm, but scorching. He groaned, falling to his knees. She rushed to him. "What is it? What's happening?" He gasped between breaths. "The curse, it's shifting, because I'm staying too long, because I want too much." And Elira knew then, the curse was not just a punishment. It was a warning. To love was to unravel faster. To want was to lose. And she had no idea how much more they could endure. Part 5. The Garden of Memory. Elira did not sleep that night. While Kaylin rested, his body exhausted from the curse's flare, she walked the edges of the vale, barefoot, letting the ancient soil speak to her. The land whispered, not in words but feelings. The curse that bound Kaylin was older than kingdoms. It was not of fire or blood, but of longing, woven by a goddess who had once been betrayed by love. Her wrath had birthed spells that punished those who dared to hope after being forsaken. Kaylin had loved once and been left behind. She saw it in the way he winced when couples in her books kissed, in how he changed the subject when she asked about his past. There were wounds in him that no herb could touch. But there was one place that still held pieces of his truth. The garden. At the edge of the vale, overgrown with ivy and hidden behind a veil of illusion, lay a forgotten garden. Elira had only glimpsed it in dreams. Petals the color of Kaylin's eyes, trees that hummed songs of sorrow. Now, with the moon high and watching, she found it. There, blooming in silence, were flowers unlike any in the rest of the vale. Pale blue blossoms. Sirenia, they were called. Flowers that only grew where heartbreak was buried and still mourned. At the center of the garden stood a stone, half buried, etched with fading runes. Kaylin's name was carved into it. Elira sank to her knees, breath stolen by the truth. This was his memory, his grave. The world above had buried him, believing him lost. But the veil, merciful and quiet, had held onto his soul when time did not. And it was here, among sorrow and soil, that Elira made her choice. The next morning, when Kaylin stirred, she found her waiting with steady eyes. She said, "I went to your garden." He jaw tightened. "You shouldn't have." "I had to. Because I can't help you if I don't understand your pain." His voice cracked. I was to be married, a treaty of hearts and kingdoms, but she didn't want me. She fled, and I was cursed for loving too deeply, for holding on to what had already let go. And now? Alira asked softly. Kaelin met her gaze. Now, I'm afraid, because I'm starting to feel again. She stepped closer, placing her hand gently over his. Then let me feel it with you. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he whispered, even if it dooms us both? And Alira, with all the calm and quiet fire in her soul, answered, even then. Part 6. The Curse Unbound. The days that followed were unlike anything the Vale had ever known. Where once Kaelin had been a ghost walking through moonlight, now he stood beneath the sun, with shadows no longer clinging to his heels. He laughed more. He helped Alira with the drying herbs, even if he always crushed the rosemary too hard. He began to hum the lullaby she had once sung to him, quietly, under his breath, when he thought she wouldn't hear. But Alira always heard. Every moment they shared was tentative, fragile, like weaving love into a tapestry already fraying at the edges. They knew it couldn't last. The curse hadn't disappeared. It had merely softened, waiting, watching. One evening, as the stars spilled silver across the sky, Kaelin stood at the lake's edge, watching his reflection ripple in the water. It no longer flickered. It stayed. Alira, he said as she approached beside him, I feel alive. She looked at him, her voice a whisper. You are. He reached for her then, slowly, carefully, as if asking permission with every inch. Their fingers touched and then twined. No shimmer, no vanishing. Just warmth. Real. But as the moon reached its peak, the air changed. The lake stilled. The trees held their breath. And from the shadows rose a figure, tall, cloaked in deep night and sorrow, the goddess of lost promises. Her voice echoed through the Vale like the first note of morning. You were meant to forget, Kaelin, to fade. He stepped in front of Alira. And I did. But then I met her, and I remembered what it meant to hope. The goddess's eyes narrowed. Hope breaks more than it heals. Only when it's stolen, Alira said, stepping beside him. But he didn't steal it. He found it, with me. The goddess raised her hand, and Kaelin's body shuddered, flickering with silver light, like unraveling thread. Alira gripped his hand tighter. You bound him to sorrow. Let me unbind him with love. The goddess paused. Silence thickened. Then she spoke. Would you give him your days, your warmth, your years? Alira didn't flinch. All of them, if it means he can stay. Kaelin turned to her, tears shimmering. You'd give your life for me? No, she said gently. I'd give it with you. The goddess gazed at them both, the echo of a forgotten ache in her celestial eyes, and then, with a slow gesture, she placed her hand over their entwined fingers. Light bloomed. Warm, endless, soft as breath and deep as ocean. The curse shattered, not with violence, but peace. Kaelin collapsed into Alira's arms, whole, alive, free. And as dawn kissed the veil, he didn't vanish. He stayed. In the silence of the moonbound night, two souls heard each other, and the world was never the same. Thank you for wandering with us into the veil, where love echoes in every whisper. Like, share, and subscribe to The Velvet Story, where magic lives in every heartbeat. Until next time, keep listening to the whispers.